Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is the second part of a little series on the Pirc with 4 bishop g5. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and in this video we are going to be taking a look at what the engines consider to be the main line, and we're going to be marvelling at what Dragon came up with when I let it analyse. And well, played lots and lots of games between Stockfish and Dragon and Leela and found some quite amazing things. Let's have a look how this comes about. So after e4, d6, d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, white plays bishop g5, bishop g7, and now the main line, the move the engines consider to be the best, which is queen d2. And interestingly enough, in this position, the engines want to play h6. Always a little bit risky. You're never quite sure with black, is h6 a good idea, but mostly if the bishop has to retreat to h4, as it really does here, then it's never such a bad idea. In the King's Indian often you can just retreat the bishop to e3, and the fact that black's played h7 to h6 means that black can't castle, but here black does have the possibility of going knight g4. I think this was the engine main line, knight c6, d5 and e5. And the bishop comes round to g3, which isn't a great spot for it. It's a very interesting line. I think well worth playing with either side, but it seemed to be in general fairly okay for black. So bishop h4 is the main line, and well, the nice thing from the black perspective is that with the bishop already on h4, white doesn't have any h4 to h5 attacks against the black king. However, what white will have is ideas of f4 and e5, and yeah, I mean that's where white's strength is, and where black's got to be really careful. So after castles, white castles queenside, stopping black from playing e5 because of d takes e5, and so now black has to find some counterplay. And I was a little bit surprised that the engines really like this move c6, but it kind of makes sense. I mean, if white played the bishop to e3 earlier and played some sort of f3 system, then e4 is very nicely protected. So, playing moves like b5 to b4 doesn't really achieve anything. But having played the bishop to g5 early, it's chased back to h4. White is going to play for a plan with f4 to e5. So, playing b5 to b4 to chase the knight away from defending the central light squares, it kind of makes a lot of sense here. So king b1 is played by the engines, and this is actually a very interesting point here. The engines are actually split about this. One idea that they like is to play the move queen c7, stopping white from playing e4 to e5 and preparing b5 to b4. It's very interesting. But what Stockfish wanted was to play the move b5. Now this is interesting, but it does have one slight drawback, namely that white can play the move e5. Now normally when black plays b5, the idea is always to meet e5 with b4. But now you see the cunning point of 8 king b1, because now I can take, and then take on e7. And if the king was on c1, you'd have c takes d2 check, but here you don't. So I'm going to have e takes f8 with check, and then I'll be able to move my queen afterwards, and white's going to win lots of material. So normally speaking, if you can meet b5 with this move e5, then you're doing quite well. But actually, Stockfish just plays d takes e5 and plays this endgame. I'm trying to think now which way did he do it. Did he play knight d7? I think it was knight d7, f4, and then g5. And this seems to work out quite decently for black. But what Dragon came up with was simply astonishing. I loved it so much that I just wanted to share it with you. Dragon plays the move knight d5. Obviously, rather than just if you're playing the Pirc, I mean, you're really looking for counterplay somehow. So, a line where you're exchanging off queens, even if it's good, yeah, not 100% what I'm looking for really. So I like Dragon's play in this game a lot more. So after knight d5, white takes on d5, and then c takes d5. And now we've got to start looking at what's happening here. So the first thing that you notice is that black has sacrificed this pawn on b5, but it's not yeah, it's sort of a pawn where you sort of say, well, if white takes this pawn on b5, black's actually opening up the b file here. There's going to be counterplay, and indeed that's pretty much the case. Actually, after this move, queen b6, the engines already prefer black. Queen e2, we go a6, bishop d3, knight c6, hitting this one. F4, we go rook b8, b3, queen b4, we're attacking this. We've even got ideas like knight e5, and the bishop on h4 is hanging. Yeah, I mean queen a3, knight b4. It's pretty dangerous for white. The engines managed to hold it, but it's not comfortable. So taking that pawn is not good news. So what the engines want to play is the move f4 here. Simply, very sensible. Leave that pawn hanging. What can it do? And just consolidate the centre, block out the bishop on g7, and well, I mean, also at some stage later, maybe you're going to prepare f5. Maybe bishop d3. Whoops, bishop d3, and then f5, and break open the king side. And I mean, the next move that Dragon played was again just caught me totally by surprise, and I found it amazing. Dragon plays the move b4 in this position. So it's just carrying on that idea, right? I mean, the b pawn is just offered very gladly. You go knight c6, queen a3, we go queen c7, knight f3, rook b8, and then we're coming in with knight b4 and rook b6 and all that sort of stuff. Again, very, very nice counterplay. Don't worry, again, I've got it all in the PGNs that I'll be putting up, so don't worry about that. But yeah, I mean, just excellent counterplay for black. By the way, I mean, just to mention it, what I always found was that I started playing the modern and the Pirc when I came back from chess, from a break. When I came back to chess from a break, rather. And I mean, what I tended to find, I hadn't played it as a professional, but I got pretty good results as an amateur. But what I found was that sacrificing pawns was kind of the thing that I did on a much more regular basis than in any other opening, really. It was always about sacrificing pawns for counterplay as black. And well, this definitely fits into this way of playing. Now, quite interesting actually, what Stockfish comes up with as white is something very concrete, but that sort of, goes against what he's been doing, really. I was looking at natural moves like, for example, knight f3, but then, black plays a5. The idea being that if rook e1, looking for the same trick that Stockfish tries in the game, black can just go rook a7 to defend e7, and then afterwards you're just going to go knight c6 and a4 and bishop f5 and go for counterplay. It's very, very interesting, but it seems to be okay for black, certainly. So what Stockfish did here was to play the move rook e1. And the idea is actually quite unpleasant. You're attacking the pawn on e7 like this, and you're just threatening e takes d6. And it looks a little bit tricky to avoid something annoying. Now, actually, Leela played queen c7, which was quite decent. And after e takes d6, e takes d6. Bishop d3, knight c6, f5. Felt kind of dangerous for black to me, but Leela managed to draw games, quite. Reasonably easily, although I'd need to try it out myself to be sure that it's as easy for me to hold them as Leela. But I mean, that's nothing compared to what Dragon came up with. I don't know. I mean, you can sort of maybe put the video on pause and try and come up with the idea. Certainly, it made me fall off my chair when I saw it. What Dragon played was the move bishop f5 here, and after e takes d6, queen b6. There we are. Take my pawns. I mean, I really love this plan. Whenever white sort of plays a move where white's played f4 to consolidate the centre, and then all of a sudden he's switched and he's taking pawns somehow. I always love to try and find things that are really, really, really active. And well, I mean, what Dragon does here is absolutely amazing. So it wasn't really clear to me, why wouldn't white just take on e7? I mean, it's clear why you don't go bishop e7, because rook c8 is actually quite tricky. Hitting c2, and if bishop d3, then we've got queen takes d4. It's rather unpleasant. the only move you've got here is rook e5, and then black's got this move, rook c2 takes queen c4 check, king d1, bishop d3 with yeah, a hell of an initiative. So all in the PGN, so don't worry about it. But f takes, d takes c7 was not played by Stockfish, so I'm sort of wondering why, because black has to play rook e8, so yeah, why wouldn't you do it? But yeah, this ends up being just pretty okay for black. So after knight f3, black can simply play knight c6. Just like in the game, as you'll see, we're threatening b3 and knight b4 here, which is really dangerous. So white has to go bishop d3, and then we take on d4 here. For example, let me just show you one line. Knight e5, we take, knight takes a5, bishop f2, queen f6. And yeah, simply there's no way in the long run that white is keeping hold of this pawn on e7. If you hadn't gone bishop f2, black would have gone knight f5 first. And well, we've got dangerous ideas here as well. So black's absolutely fine in this position. Yeah, quite amazing, but absolutely true. So what Stockfish did was to play the move knight f3 in this position. And yeah, I mean, you're just saying, well, spend a tempo picking up this pawn, and then afterwards I'll go bishop d3, and then I'm going to just start hitting your king side. But what Dragon did was just incredible, really. Played the move b3 now. b3, there we are. Okay, a takes b3. And yeah, there's two move orders to do it. You can play the move knight c6 straight away if you want. What Dragon did was to take on d6 first of all. And after bishop d3, took, and knight c6. And at first sight this doesn't look too impressive until you suddenly try and think, how do I deal with this threat of knight b4 and queen a5? And it's kind of difficult, because you can't go c3 because a queen takes b3, because the bishop's over here. You can't have it covering this square. And yeah, knight b4, queen a5, followed by rook c8. It's really, really dangerous. So yeah, I mean, at first, I was just thinking I can't actually see a way to do this. This just looks really, really very tricky for white. But what the engines find, they find this idea. And knight b4 and then queen d1. d1's important. You've got to give the king an escape square there. And the idea is if queen a5, we will just go bishop takes d6. And yeah, I mean, you can go queen a2, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I just escape there, and then I'm going to take this knight on b4, and I'm going to move over here. And yeah, if you don't give the check, then I just take the knight on b4, and my king's nice and safe with all these pawns. So, I was thinking, wow, okay. But what the engines play, they play the move queen a6. So not giving you that move bishop d6. Giving up the exchange, it's true. And now, yeah, another far from obvious move, the move king takes f8. And you'll see again why this is important. And, well, what have we got? Dragon has given up a pawn and the exchange. But has got this incredible attacking setup with the knight and the queen. Possibilities of giving a check and a rook that's going to come round to c8 and attack the pawn on c2. And actually, it's very, very hard for white to come out of this reasonably. I mean, the weird thing was that I was looking at just playing king c1. I was just analysing this without an engine, and then throwing it at the engines and saying, play some games, tell me what's up. Because I was looking at this and I was sort of thinking, well, queen a1, king d2, queen b2, king e3. Might this actually be quite decent somehow? I mean, I'm going to escape, right? I mean, knight c2, I go king f2. And queen b3, and my feeling was there that okay, black's got two pawns, but these are all isolated, and the knight's pinned to the queen. Won't this be quite decent for me? But actually the engines think that black's just a lot better, because there's no way to exploit this pin, and this knight pawn on d4 is very weak. Black's easily going to end up with another pawn, and of course once that pawn goes you get active pieces. I mean, this was one engine game. Queen b1, knight takes d4, takes, rook d1, d4, rook b2, rook c3. There's just no way that you're just not getting at this structure somehow. It's amazing, but black is actually doing quite well. And at some stage, this knight's going to come round into e4 as well, and yeah, black's just going to have slightly better chances. It was ending in draws, all this sort of stuff, but it's it's really pretty decent for black. The one thing that I really liked, I mean, whilst I was sort of thinking, well, are those positions really good for black? Obviously, I didn't assess them properly, but one thing that I was really interested in was to play the move g5, because I sort of thought, it's the kind of the shogi principle that you mustn't chase a king. You've got to come at him from both flanks, and yeah, I sort of like the idea, because if white doesn't react, then I've either got gf, which is taking away some escape squares from the white king, or I've got g4 to undermine the knight. But yeah, I mean, Stockfish just finds the draw. I thought that g4 was necessary to block g5, which is also a 0.00. Stockfish's main line is to take, bishop takes d4. Yeah, you can do this as well, because the rook on e2 is hanging. But then knight e6 check, fe, queen d4, queen a1 check, queen f6, and then we've got checks, and checks. And well, this queen ending is drawn. In actual fact, you'll either give lots of checks or take on h2. It's all going to be drawn in the end. So that was an interesting idea, but Stockfish didn't reject it completely. It was an interesting idea, but it's very shogi-like to play like that. But yeah, the engines find a better line, really, and that's to play the move rook e3. The idea being that after rook c8, rook c3, and when I saw rook e3 and then rook c3, I thought, well, that's it, isn't it? It's just over. But it's not. Black keeps on attacking. So rook e8. And funnily enough, there was I was thinking, oh, I suppose after king c1, trying to escape with the king, black just goes rook e2, does he, to go queen a1. And then I spotted it. We've got just queen takes e2 in this position, queen e2, rook check, king e7, and rook e1. Haha. But in actual fact, we just carry on, just like in this game with rook e4. But after rook e1, black plays rook e4, and yeah, it's amazing somehow. I mean, yeah, in a way, there's not really that many threats. But on the other hand, yeah, there are sort of threats, because one thing you're threatening is to play a move like bishop takes d4, and after knight d4, we go check, king c1, check, king there, and rook takes d4. So yeah, this move bishop d4 is actually a really big threat, and it's really hard to stop. Stockfish was going king c1, Leela was playing g3, but it led to the same thing more or less. King c1, bishop takes d4, rook e4, little intermediate move, as I said before, knight d4, queen a1 check, king d2, rook d4 is curtains for white. But white's got this move rook e4, when of course d takes e4, there's queen takes d4. But black plays bishop c3, and now let me just take you back to this moment here. When white played bishop f8, you could have played the very natural rook takes f8, but your king then, you could play exactly the same way, but your king would be on g8. Instead, the engines elected to play king takes f8. When you move forwards to the position, you see why here, because if the king was on g8, white could just play the move rook e8 check, the king would have to move to g7, and then b takes c3 and white's a rook up. Here, white wants to avoid this line. Sorry, b takes c3, queen a3 check, king d2, d takes e4, takes, which is approximately equal, queen f3, queen b4 check. And so plays the move rook e8 check to, well, leave black with double pawns, not allow black to take on e4. But yeah, okay, you're ending up with double pawns here, that's true. But you're not ending up a rook down. So this move on move 20 king f8 was absolutely crucial for the whole of this combination. Has to be visualized before, and yeah, this part of the combination has to be visualized as well. And yeah, I mean, this is all being done at a 15+3 time control. Engines are just incredible. So queen a1 check, king d2 takes and takes, and knight c6. And actually, I want to give myself some endgame practice as well. So I'm probably going to try and hold this position as black. The engines hold it without any problems whatsoever. You can have a look at the PGNs for the defensive technique. I mean, basically the idea is to bring the king to e6 or something and then just sort of stand still, really. That looks more or less like it, but I'm definitely going to give it a go, because it's like quite a nice endgame that you could easily get ground down by an engine. So just to make sure, but this is actually basically an equal endgame, and Komodo Dragon drew it pretty easily. I'll just show you the one sample game. Knight e7, knight d4, king d7, king d3, king c7, knight check. Obviously, if knight a7, you've got king b6. Knight check, king c7. Knight came back to e2, king c6, king e3. Gave a little check, came back. Brought the knight round to f6, then moved around. I mean, basically, you're just sort of standing still and, you know, just sort of playing the knight so that it's capable of defending the d5 pawn. That's it, more or less. And then here we got a little bit of a flourish at the end. Black went after the pawn, and this was yeah, sort of agreed drawn. So this is looking a little bit clearer, right? I mean, you know, you're going to play the knight round to f6 afterwards, and it's going to be fine. But that was the amazing dragon idea. I mean, it just you know, shone out for me, because you know, Stockfish was kind of you know, finding lots of early opening lines where it played end games, and you know, and that was fine, and it was holding them you know, in very nice fashion. But I really thought that what Dragon played here was you know, gorgeous spirit of the Pirc, really, and all of these pawn sacrifices, and this super activity, you know, and this one as well, this very nice idea, you know, just knight c6 and b4 coming in, and then you know, just this exchange sacrifice with the amazing point to take with a king on f8. You know, I just thought it was really absolutely outstanding, really, and yeah, quite amazing, and all completely new. And yeah, this is really one of the engine's you know, main lines against this 4 bishop g5 system. So if you're a Pirc player, then take a look at this, because I think it's definitely worth looking at. So there we are. That was the examination of the Pirc 4 bishop g5 with Dragon 3.3, with starring roles for Stockfish and Leela as well. Hope this is interesting. I'm planning to do quite a few more opening videos. Somehow quite keen on them, and well, that's the joy of being an amateur. You can just follow whichever rabbit hole you like. You don't have to do anything that's useful for a tournament or anything. So yeah, I hope you're going to enjoy these. And well, you know, if you enjoyed them, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, take a look at my new books, which are really, really good, I promise. There's chessable courses in them as well. And otherwise, you know, thanks very much for watching. Have a great new year, and well, hope to see you in a lot more videos in the new year. Thanks for watching.